The grand iron gates of the Beaumont estate creaked open in the pale light of dawn. No one inside expected the master of the house to return that morning. Charles Beaumont, a self-made millionaire with a reputation for discipline and control, had been away on business in Singapore. His return flight was scheduled 2 days later, and his wife had arranged the week's affairs assuming the mansion would be his silent kingdom until then. But Charles had changed his plans. He wanted to surprise his family, see the twin daughters he missed so dearly, and perhaps even test the loyalty of those under his roof. He had a habit of arriving unannounced, a quirk that made the staff nervous and his household tense. The house was unusually quiet. He carried his leather bag across the marble floor, the echo of his shoes sounding louder than usual. He expected to hear giggles, chatter, or at least the hum of the morning kitchen. Instead, silence reigned. Then, faintly, from the east wing where his daughter's playroom was, he heard a voice. It wasn't the cheerful sing-song of his twins. It wasn't even the voice of his wife. It was low, deliberate, and strangely commanding. He followed the sound, his brow furrowing. When he reached the carved oak door of the playroom, he stopped, hand hovering over the brass handle. The voice grew clearer. It was Maria, the maid. Maria had worked in the Beaumont mansion for 2 years. She was quiet, efficient, and never stepped beyond the invisible boundaries of her station. Charles had barely noticed her except to nod approval when he saw the shine of polished floors or the neat folds of freshly pressed shirts. Yet now, she was speaking in a tone unlike anything he'd ever heard from her. Charles slowly pushed the door open. What he saw made his chest tighten. His daughters, Emily and Elise, sat cross-legged on the floor, their blonde curls catching the morning light. In front of them was Maria, holding a small wooden box. Inside the box were objects Charles had never seen before, tiny carved figures, old coins, a bundle of yellowed papers. But it wasn't the objects that stunned him. It was what Maria was saying. "These are the secrets your father doesn't want you to know," she whispered. "Power isn't just about money. It's about knowledge. About controlling what others cannot see." The twins were staring at her wide-eyed, as if hypnotized. Charles froze at the doorway, his pulse hammering. Maria noticed him only after a long pause. Her eyes widened, but instead of scrambling to hide what she was doing, she lifted her chin, almost defiantly. "Mr. Beaumont," she said calmly, her accent more pronounced than usual. "You're home early." "What?" Charles managed, his voice low and dangerous. "Are you teaching my children?" Emily tugged at her father's sleeve. "Papa, Maria says we can be powerful like you. She says there are things you don't tell us because you're too busy." Elise chimed in, "She's teaching us how to see what others can't." Charles's gaze shifted from his daughters back to Maria. "Explain. Now." Maria stood slowly, clutching the wooden box to her chest. For a moment, she looked almost regal, her maid's uniform unable to diminish the quiet authority she radiated. "I am not just a maid, sir," she said, her voice steady. "My father was a teacher, a historian. He was silenced in my country for teaching truths our leaders wanted buried. When I came here, I thought I left that life behind. But your daughters, they are bright, curious, and hungry for more than dolls and dresses. They deserve to know the power of history, of wisdom. That is what I was giving them." Charles stepped closer, his jaw clenched. "And what makes you think you have the right to decide what my children deserve?" Maria did not flinch. "Because power without knowledge is dangerous. You have wealth, Mr. Beaumont. But will your daughters grow only to inherit money, or will they inherit the strength to stand on their own?" For a long moment, Charles said nothing. He looked at his daughters, who were watching him anxiously, their small hands resting protectively on the strange wooden box as though it contained treasure. The truth was, Charles had built his empire through ruthless calculation, endless hours of work, and sacrifices his children could never imagine. He provided them everything money could buy, yet he had rarely given them his time. The idea that someone else, a maid no less, had filled that void with lessons of her own made his stomach churn. And yet, part of him admired her courage. Most employees trembled in his presence. Maria stood her ground. "Leave us," he said at last, his tone sharp. "Go to the kitchen. We'll discuss your future here later." Maria inclined her head slightly, not in submission, but as if acknowledging a stalemate. She left quietly, her footsteps fading down the hall. Charles knelt before his daughters. "What did she tell you?" Emily leaned closer. She said money is power, but it can be lost. She said knowledge stays with us forever. Elise added, she said even kings can fall, but no one can take away what we learn. Their innocence struck him harder than any business rival's attack ever had. He realized that while Maria may have crossed a line, she had also sparked something he himself had neglected, their hunger to learn, to grow beyond the gilded cage of wealth. Charles sat in silence, the morning sun warming his back, the weight of fatherhood pressing heavier than ever. Perhaps Maria had overstepped, but perhaps, he thought, she had also shown him a truth he had been blind to. When Maria returned later, expecting dismissal, Charles surprised her. "You will not teach my daughter's secrets behind my back again," he said firmly. "But, if you wish to teach them history, languages, the stories of the world, you will do it openly. With my consent. Do you understand?" Maria's eyes widened. Then she bowed her head. "Yes, sir." For the first time in years, Charles felt something stir in his chest, a strange blend of fear and pride. His empire could crumble one day, his fortune might vanish. But if his daughters grew wise, resilient, and strong, they would survive anything. And that, he realized, was the true legacy worth leaving.